And we are live.
Okay. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon also. Welcome to the second session of the webinar series on long-term energy scenarios, LTES, for developing national energy transitions plans in Asia. My name is Juan Jose Garcia, and I'm program officer of the Clean Energy Transition Scenarios at the International Renewable Energy Agency, IRENA, and I have also the pleasure to be your host today. This webinar series is organized as an activity under the framework of IRENA's Long-Term Energy Scenario Network, a community of energy scenario practitioners in the government sector that aims to facilitate this type of exchange of experiences and practices on developing and using energy scenario. This webinar series is also implemented in partnership with the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, ESCAP. Over the next 6 weeks, we will feature selected countries from the Asian region that can share good scenario planning practices for setting long-term policies and plans, particularly in the context of the clean energy transition. Last week, we had the opportunity to learn from the case of Philippines, who shared their experiences on developing, using, and creating the necessary skills for energy scenarios for their development plans of the energy system. Next slide, please. Okay, this is today's agenda. We're going to make a brief presentation to give you some context about the LTES network, and then we'll go directly to the country presentations. Today, we have the honor and the opportunity to learn from 2 countries in the region, Indonesia, through the National Development Planning Agency, and also we will learn from the case of Malaysia, through the Energy Commission of Malaysia. We will have the opportunity from this government institution to listen from firsthand about the planning practices on energy scenarios. At the end, we're closing today's session with a conversation with the speakers. And of course, we'll try to address your questions or any question that you might have from the panelists. Next slide, please. So, in this sense, during the Q&A session, we encourage you to please use the Zoom function of Q&A to ask any question to your speakers, and we will do our best to address those questions to the speakers. Also, another note, the recording and the slides for every presentation will be available online at the IRENA's website in the address that you are seeing right now in the screen. So to start with the program of today, I would like to introduce, well, Mr. Nadim Gussos. He is Associate Program Officer at IRENA and will give us a very short introduction of the LTES network and the work that the network is doing. So Nadim, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Juan Jose, and I hope you can hear me well. Yes, perfect. So I will give a very quick overview of the LTES network and some of the regional focus, so to set the scene a bit for this conversation. So my name is Nadim Gussos. I'm an Associate Program Officer at IRENA, working on the Long-Term Energy Scenarios Network. And I'll just quickly give some introduction to the LTES network. So what the LTES network is, it's a platform to exchange knowledge about national long-term energy scenario development and use among scenario practitioners, in short. And the objective there is to promote a wider and more effective use of long-term energy scenarios for the clean energy transition. So specifically in the context of the clean energy transition. So this is done by sharing experiences and by sharing practices by the different scenario practitioners, along with other experts in the scenario field, let's say, so from research, academia, from the private sector, international organizations. And the idea is to provide this peer-to-peer modality to exchange this knowledge. So the network started in 2018, first under the Clean Energy Ministerial umbrella, where IRENA was coordinating the long-term energy scenarios campaign and initiative, and it expanded under IRENA's own long-term energy scenarios network. So since 2018, we've had over 50 countries present their own practices and studies and several different activities for webinars. And these examples we've managed as well to collect and synthesize in different analytical reports, so to promote the sharing of this information with the scenario practitioners. Since 2018, we've also had over 60 international and regional events and webinars organized, addressing different parts of the world, addressing different regions, different topics. So it's been a very active network since then. And at the moment, the network has 28 member countries. So these are member countries that have established good planning practices. They have established good scenario development and use practices, and they're aiming to go to the next level. So let's say not only talking about energy planning per se, but also energy transition planning. So how can we address the complexities that are brought on by moving to energy systems with higher share of renewables, moving towards carbon neutrality, moving towards all the complexities that this huge transformation makes. And with that, we have 13 technical partner institutions, and those are institutions that support countries in developing scenarios and in using them as well. So when we work within this LTES network, we have this simple mind map in mind. So we really focus on the idea of the transparent and open long-term energy scenario development process. And with that here, you can see this mind map that was adapted. And this is the general process that we look at. So mostly, not all the time, but a lot of the times, scenarios are developed using energy modeling tools. So those tools are used to assess the different socio-technical pathways for the next 15, 20, 30 years quantitatively, and they're used to produce the different scenarios. The scenarios here are used to evaluate the different technology pathways, different policies, and the ways to reach the different targets. And in most cases, or in a lot of cases, especially when we're talking about the national level of producing scenarios, then here we're talking about how these insights from these scenarios move into the policy making. How do they inform policy and on the short, medium, and long term as well? And throughout this whole process, we'd like to emphasize that stakeholder consultation is really essential at all points here. So we're not talking about only, let's say, a one-way movement, but really a conversation and discussion throughout this whole process between the different modelers, for example, and different stakeholders. At the time of producing the scenarios and narratives for the scenarios, there's also this kind of engagement. And finally, this type of consultation at the point of making or informing policy. And vice versa as well, of course. Those are all opportunities to be able to inform the public, to inform other stakeholders of what's happening within these processes. So with that, within the network, there's a focus on three main pillars. There's a focus on strengthening scenario development. There's a focus as well on improving the use of scenarios. And finally, there's an focus on how countries can, let's say, build the skills. How can they create the ecosystem to be able to develop and use the scenario? So what are they doing to create the ecosystem of skills to have the scenario capacity at hand? And here we, as I mentioned before, we collect these practices and we produce different types of report from these practices shared by the countries and different experts. And so in general, or maybe let's go back here, we tend to look at things from two different sides. So there is a thematic, let's say, focus, where we look into different topics that are prioritized by the country members. So here we're looking at different things like how countries are improving their participatory processes, or how are they coordinating between the energy and climate communities. So really looking into the different topics and themes prioritized by members, but we also look at things from a regional perspective. And this is because we see quite a lot of appetite from countries to learn from their own region, from their neighboring countries who might have similar conditions. They might have similar economic or social or political conditions that make their own challenges similar to some of the regional challenges. So, and this is why we have been organizing these webinar series. So this is the third webinar series of its kind. We're holding these as peer-to-peer knowledge sharing webinars focused on the different regions. First, we had the Latin America and Caribbean webinar series where we brought together 14 countries. And we partnered with Get Transform and UN ECLAC. And in 2022, we finalized the webinar series with in Africa. We had 9 different countries there and 3 regional institutions that presented their experiences. We had partners as well, regional partners from around. So we had the UN ECA, Get Transform, the African Development Bank, the African Union, and AUDA NEPAD. And once we had these really informative sessions at those webinars, we then compiled this knowledge into regionally focused publications. So as you can see, there was a report published synthesizing what was learned from each country in Latin America and the Caribbean. I had a similar one for Africa. And the idea is for this webinar series to also have an outcome similar or an output similar to this. So we'd have to compile this information that we're learning today, that we're learning throughout this webinar series, into a report that can hopefully, let's say, promote this knowledge and really share it across the different sides of the world as well more easily. So I won't get into the findings. I think like to make this quick, but we do see across these webinar series some very encouraging trends. We've seen across these 23 different presentations from the past webinar series, some important trends, such as, for example, that countries are embracing more broader scoped and more socio-economically and environmentally conscious energy scenarios. We see a focus and a prioritization of long-term of renewable energy, in long-term energy scenarios. There's also a bigger focus on promoting more inclusive and more participatory development of scenarios within energy planning. There's also the fact that countries are leveraging all this capacity and global support that exists to build up their own resources and create this ecosystem of skills that I mentioned before. There's also an encouragement of open data sharing for trust building and policy development. And finally, we see scenarios not only being updated more, but also used in different types of plans in the climate world, in energy, in power. So there is more regular and more use of scenarios, which is encouraging to see. So with that, I mean, these are trends that we see, but I think the real value here is really listening to each presentation, listening to the different country experiences, because there's a lot of value in how each country has done their own process. What are the lessons learned? So really look forward to this presentation and the ones coming after. And with that, I would like to end my presentation. So thank you very much. And over to you, Juan Jose.
Thank you very much, Nadim, for this brief presentation of the LTES network. Now, I would like to introduce our first speaker for today from Indonesia. So I'd like to introduce Mr. Yusuf Suryanto. He currently serves as Senior Planner and Coordinator for the Electricity at the Directorate of Electricity, Telecommunications and Informatics from the Ministry of National Development Planning in Indonesia. Over the years, Mr. Suryanto has continually developed his professional expertise through various training programs. This includes integrating governance and different trainings in climate financing funding in South Asia. So, Mr. Suryanto, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jose, for this kind of this is very honorable for me, for us to be here and to share our thought on these matters. So, like Pa Yusuf said, that I'm Yusuf Suryanto from Ministry of National Development Planning, BAPPENAS of Indonesia. Can we continue to the slide? Yeah, so this is to give you more understand about Indonesia, how we formulate national development planning documents. So basically, BAPPENAS is one of the institution in Indonesia that responsible to formulate national planning documents. So this is the national level, more macro or strategic views. So basically, BAPPENAS will coordinate with as well as cooperate with line ministries involved in terms of involved in many sectors. So for example, for me, I'm working for Directorate of Electricity, so I'm collaborating with the stakeholders from Ministry of Energy, for example, and other related line ministries as well. So then in Indonesia, we have cascade national development planning. First is long-term national development planning for 20 years period. And then we have a national medium-term development planning for 5 years period. And then we also have a government working plan, which is annual working document. So in order to formulate the national development planning, we are utilizing several approaches. Among others, we do technical or technocratic process, as well as we encourage the participation from the public, and then we use or we push the bottom up and top down approaches as well. So in terms of how we integrate all relevant line ministries planning documents, we also encourage, we also adopt as well as adapt the sectoral development plannings. Sectoral development plannings here, what I'm saying is, for example, green design, master plan, or roadmap. So this is overall view of national development planning formulation in Indonesia. Next slide, please. So basically, BAPPENAS or my directorate use the long-term scenario in order to ensure that electricity development is supporting our long-term vision. For this case, Indonesia is now formulating the long-term vision for 2045. So such that we need to ensure that the electricity development in this case sufficient enough to support that long-term vision. So in terms of the what is it? In terms of the vision itself, we have at least two different objectives. First of all, we would like to encourage the green economy, as well as we would like to achieve just or equitable development. So this objective, we need to make sure that will be supported in terms of electricity development. So this is why my directorate BAPPENAS utilize the long-term energy scenario modeling, particularly for such kind of use case. Next slide, please. So this is the development of the scenario. So long-term energy scenario in my case, like I said, that it is based on Indonesia long-term vision 2045. But other than that, we need to ensure that national and regional development agendas should be highlighted or should be incorporated. So this is one thing that we in BAPPENAS is encourage all line ministries, all stakeholders to look. Indonesia is not on the national or micro level only, but we need to see Indonesia as as in more detail. In this case, we look at several regional developments. So then the scenario itself is attempted to align the national ambition, as well as we would like to align the global trend, and as well as the national commitment to the global goal. For example, we would like to support the reduction of CO2 emission. So like I said before, the scenario itself is aimed to support the national development, long-term development planning. We call it RPGP, as well as medium-term development planning. We call it RPGMN. So then in terms of modeling processes, we utilize several tools. So in this case, we are using LEAP, then PIPSA, as well as we try to use I call it simple model of benefit. So we utilize those tools because we would like to have more complete policy insights. Next, please. So then this is how we develop the scenario. So we do focus group discussion, and then we are doing public consultation. For this case, we conducting emerging dialogues, as well as we also invite the IRENA, because I know that IRENA also support Indonesia, in this case, Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources, to develop long-term scenario as well. So in this case, we would like to thank to IRENA. So we also we will conduct Indonesia's Sustainable Energy Week ISU. We did last year, but we gonna do again this year around October. So hopefully IRENA also can participate in this event. So, and the last slide, I believe. Next slide. So to sustaining the knowledge, so like I said before that, we do the scenarios with the help of our development partner, in this case GIZ, under CASE program, and also we supported by the consultant team. And then we would like to do a knowledge transfer. So hopefully we're gonna have training for the using the model, and as well as we would like to create alliances with universities in Indonesia. So we do hope that the work that has been done sustaining and stick in the Indonesia. And the last thing that we would like to build on development, I call it Indonesian model based on open source application. So because one of insight that I got during the modeling session is that some model or some tools requires money to use it. So I think this is my slide. Yeah, apologize for my presentation if not if I made a mistake. Back to you, Jose.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yusuf, for your insightful presentation, and I can assure you that everything was very clear. So thank you again. Now I would like to introduce our second speaker of today. He's from Malaysia. He's Mr. Mohd Rizal Ramli. He currently serves as Senior Deputy Director of Capacity Planning and Development at the Energy Commission of Malaysia. During his career, he also has held different roles, such as Deputy Director of Electricity Market Operations and also Head of Capacity Planning at the Energy Commission. I would like to make just a quick reminder that if you have any questions to address to our two speakers, please use the Q&A function in the Zoom platform so we can cover them during the next segment of this conversation. And yes, Mr. Rizal, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction. Assalamualaikum and very good afternoon and evening all. My name is Mohd Rizal Ramli from the Energy Commission of Malaysia. First of all, we would like to thank IRENA for inviting the Energy Commission.
Excuse me, Mr. Rizal, there is some issue with the sound at the moment.
Hello.
The sound is not working very well from your side.
Can you hear me?
Not clearly. It's breaking up and there's some sort of feedback.
Well, wait. What about now? Is it okay?
Not yet. Sorry.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, much better. Thank
Okay,
you.
all right, okay, all right. My apologies for the interruption. Okay, next. Okay, this is the outlines of my presentation. I will start with the development of scenario, covering the regulatory overview, planning governance, and also moving forward. Specifically, we are now embarking on the integrated system planning, which in essence incorporate the generation and the network planning together. Next, I will elaborate a bit about the use of scenario for our long-term planning purposes, and also the communication. How do we communicate the result of the scenario? And finally, I will conclude my presentation with the scenario capacity building. Okay, next. A little bit introduction to the Energy Commission. We are the statutory body responsible for regulating the energy sector, specifically electricity and the pipe gas supply industries in Peninsula and Malaysia. In terms of ministry, for matters relating to the supply of electricity, we are reporting to the Ministry of Natural Resources, Environment and Climate Change. While for the matter relating to the supply of gas, we will report. We are reporting to the Ministry of Economy. So in terms of electricity supply industry structure or ESI in Peninsula Malaysia, we have the NRECC as the ministry that is in charge of matters relating to the electricity. We in Energy Commission is the regulatory body that oversee the electricity supply industry. We have on the left side of the figure is the generation, where we have generators with PPA and SLA. We have NEDA participants, and we have interconnection, which the operation in terms of dispatch and scheduling will be done by single buyer and the grid system operator, which are the ring fence departments within TNB. The output from the generator will be then supplied through the consumer via TNB grid, and in between we have the franchise retailers and also TNB retails that take care of the retail business. So both single buyer and grid system operator, when it comes to the conduct of the daily operation, and also the in terms of the conformance to the guideline, we have the oversight panel, which is chaired by ST or Energy Commission, with the members from Energy Commission, from representative of NRECC, and also the industry experts appointed by ST. Next. In terms of planning governance, we have the Committee for the Planning and Implementation of Electricity Supply and Tariff. In short, in Malay, we call it JEPET, which is chaired by the Minister of NRECC. Under JEPET committee, we have the planning working group, or pre-JPAD, as we call it, which is chaired by ST, which look into the generation development plan for the rolling year of 20 years. Under this planning working group committee, we have the demand forecasting and generation adequacy as the main output from the working group. We have the demand projection, which also considered emerging trends such as energy efficient, electric vehicle, green mobility, and also the renewable energy. We also look into the system reliability assessment, projection of the fuel utilization, and finally the new capacity requirement. Separately, TNB, the main utility in Peninsular Malaysia, is also responsible for the transmission and distribution development plan for the next 10 years. JPAD has been mandated by the Cabinet. Whatever the outcome of the meeting of the JPAD will be then escalated to Cabinet for approval. So this committee will determine the planning and direction of the country ESI, specifically for Peninsular Malaysia and Sabah. Okay, these are the membership of JPAD, which comprise of the NRUCC, MOF, Ministry of Economy, Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry. We also have representative from the Ministry of Utilities of Sarawak, from the Economic Planning Unit of Sarawak and Sabah, from ST, from SEDA, from TNB, SSB, and Petronas. Next. So moving forward, as I said earlier, we are now looking at integrating the whole thing, basically the generation and also the transmission. Previously, what we are doing is that we will look first the generation, and the transmission will come as a sequential. It is sequential in nature, but by having the integrated system planning, we are now migrating from the generation development plan to the system development plan, which will integrate both the generation and transmission component in the planning process. Under the planning scenario, we are also looking on how to reflect future uncertainties, which mainly involve decentralization and also the decarbonization of demand and supply of electricity. Okay, so this is the planning scenarios. The chart on the right side shows the example of the planning scenarios, which will consider the decarbonization and also the decentralization aspect. Next. In terms of scenario, when we do the scenario planning, we are taking input such as fuel market data, the demand and energy forecast, the drivers of the scenario such as government policy, such as the global trend. We are also looking into the potential generation candidate and also transmission network expansion, which we are, after combining all this, we will have the generation capacity outlook model, which will identify preferred capacity expansion option. After that, after the LT or the long-term phase, we will then move to the generation time sequential model, which will then test and confirm system reliability on operability. Finally, all this will be integrated to form the system development plan. Okay, and we are also planning to have the system development statement as a way to communicate the output of the plan that we have produced to the public and also to the stakeholders. Okay, so on the right side of the slide is the communication of scenario result. We are doing this through the publication of the generation report. This is the previous publication, and also through the stakeholders engagement. Okay, next. So in building up our capacity, we are also actively engaged in a user group meeting with the global industry leading energy modelers. And also from time to time, as part of our capacity building, we will also participate in technical training with integrated assessment model consultant. And I must say that to come out with the system development plan, we collaborate extensively with the agencies and institutions so that we can have the holistic and also the scenario development that can cater to varying situation, the possibility of the future, you know. Especially we are also always take guidance from the Ministry of Natural Resources and RECC, from the Ministry of Economy, from SEDA as the agency that is in charge of the renewable energy in Malaysia, from single buyer, and from JSO, which not only deal with the daily operation, but also help us in coming out with the system development plan. We have also always collaborate with our utility, Tenaga Nasional Berhad, with SESB in Sabah and Sarawak Energy in Sarawak, and also with Petronas as the main gas supplier for Peninsula, and also with the research institution such as IPRI. All right. Next. Okay, that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much. And I pass back to Juan Jose.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rizal. It's a very interesting presentation. Now, I would like to pass to our next segment for today's session. It's a conversation between the panelists. So I would like to invite Mr. Yusuf to also turn on his camera so we can have this conversation. So yes, thank you very much. And yes, actually, I would like to start this segment with Mr. Yusuf. And specifically, I would like to start with, let's say, the scenario development process. Based on your presentation, you showed us very concretely the overall framework of the national development planning, and you show us also the different interlinkages that there are between different planning documents, between different ministries. Let's say this interaction, horizontal coordination between ministries of the central government, if we can say. So my question is, if you can elaborate a little bit more on, how this horizontal coordination is taking place, who's in terms of scenarios, who is leading the coordination of the scenario development, and also if this coordination also take place, let's say, in a vertical perspective, saying, is there any coordination between the central government and, say, the provinces government and so on? Because we also saw that your national, your scenarios actually aims to support the global vision. I mean, the country vision for 2045. So I think the coordination between provinces is also very important in this exercise. So I would like to know if you can explain us a little bit more. For instance, who is in charge of the overall leading of the energy scenario development, and how this coordination is taking place in a horizontal and vertical perspective in terms of what processes or what laws are supporting this coordination?
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Jose. So basically, like you are right that we have horizontal coordination as well as the vertical coordination. So actually, BAPPENAS is leading in terms of coordination in order to formulate national development planning. So I think we can quote unquote differentiate between the national development planning and sectoral development planning. So then in every planning, I believe that the coordination is is necessary to and every every sectoral will be coordinated will coordinate horizontally and vertically. So what I'm trying to say here is that we in BAPPENAS is a leading institution in coordination in terms of national planning document. So then we gonna conduct public not public consultation, but consultation between national level and regional as well as the sectoral level. So yeah, it is hard. Coordination is easy to say, but it is hard to do. But I think this is what we have now. And in terms of regulation, so national planning document itself will be will be based on particular regulation. For example, long-term national development planning will be in terms of law. Law is the highest level of regulation in Indonesia. And for the medium-term planning for 5 years period, the regulation will be in form of presidential decree. This is a lower level of regulation. And there are as well, in the framework itself, so we do hope that national level, I'm saying is national development planning, will be used as a guidance or as a reference for sectoral to formulate or to elaborate the planning into the more detailed planning in sectoral level. So then we see here kind of cascading between the planning itself. Hope I answered your question, Mr. Yusuf.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Yusuf. Yeah, just to be clear, so what you're saying is that BAPPENAS is also in charge for the coordination in terms of elaboration of the scenarios for that support the long-term vision.
Yeah, BAPPENAS is formulating the national long-term development planning. This is for 20 years period of planning document.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much, Mr. Yusuf. Maybe I would also like, let's say in the framework of the scenario development, and since you mentioned that actually one of the main uses for the energy scenarios in Indonesia is to support this long-term vision for development of Indonesia. And you mentioned, for instance, that you have two specific goals, one in terms of green economy and one in terms of just and equitable development. So I would like to ask you if you can explain us how actually the energies in our, let's say, what technologies or what innovation are you considering in your current scenario exercise to actually try to reach or plan towards this green economy target, let's say in reducing carbon emissions? And in the same sense, what aspects are you considering in your energy scenario for achieving this just and equitable development?
Yeah, okay. So first, we direct the scenario, like you said, in terms of to support the green economy as well as the just equitable development. So in terms of green economy, we at top level, we have what is it? We need to have strong economic growth in the future in order for us to be a developed country. So then this assumption we included in the scenario, and then our model is consisted of several regions, Pak Yusuf. So I think this is important thing. So we not modeling Indonesia as one, but Indonesia as regions. So there are 7 regions we are modeling in this case. So then the economic growth at top level then will then will elaborate in the regional level. And in terms of the the equitable development, we set some I call it minimum standard, for electricity provision, as well as we within the scenario we try to move the development towards eastern part of Indonesia. If you know the Indonesia is heavily developed in Java Island and Sumatra Island, but outside those 2 islands, the development is not is not too too high. So that's why we in the model we are also trying to move to accommodate the shifting of economy towards eastern part of Indonesia. So yeah, I think this is the my quick response.
Thank you, Mr. Yusuf. Maybe one more question before I follow. Before I move to Malaysia. Maybe retaking a little bit my previous question. So you mentioned that, I mean, BAPPENAS is in charge of the overall energy planning for development energy planning. Development
national,
planning,
yeah.
national development planning. So, and you mentioned that there also are the sectoral exercise of planning. So I was wondering, so in this sense, who is then responsible for the sectoral planning of the energy system? And considering also that you mentioned the modeling to regions, so I wonder if there is a different entity for different regions, or it is a country level institution that is actually in charge of this sectoral modeling or planning just for the energy sector
Yeah, so yeah, I think that is very good question. So then in terms of sectoral, then the planning, the master plan, the roadmap should be on the every sector line ministries. So for example, for energy modeling, for example, Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources should responsible for the more detail. I call it more detail. What is it? The planning. But what is it? We do hope that the national planning itself will be as a guidance for Ministry of Energy in terms of they are developing the model, and you know as well that every cooperation or public utilities also they are developing the planning itself for their own usage. So then it is necessary for us to coordinate each other. And go back a little bit in your previous question, how we utilize technology. So I think to utilize technology, the most important thing is public acceptance, Mr. Reposi. So that's why in my presentation, I present dialogues, because the dialogues is used to get the response from the public, whether particular technologies are quote unquote doable or accepted by the public itself.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yusuf. No, I agree with you in terms that the public acceptance is a very important aspect in terms of technology advancement. And we will come back to the stakeholder part later in this conversation. Now, I would like to maybe ask some questions to Mr. Rizal. So, Mr. Rizal, also, let's say in the context of developing and leading the process of energy scenarios in the country, you mentioned and explained us that there is this committee that is also part in this committee. Part of this committee is this planning work group that is chaired by the Energy Commission. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I would think that then it's the Energy Commission who's leading the process for developing energy scenarios in the country for, let's say, in this case, the Generation Development Plan. So I'm curious if, or maybe my question is if you can explain us a little bit more about the governance of, or the, let's say, the institutionality of this committee. Is there any legal framework or is a presidential mandate that created this committee, or how this committee works actually, and how is this committee made also sustainable in the time in the country for these attributions?
All right, okay. Thank you, Juan Jose. If I understand correctly, your question is about the governance of the Committee for the Planning and Implementation of Electricity Supply and Tariff, the JPET, and also how do this committee and also the subcommittee under the main committee works. Okay.
Yes, exactly. And what legal frameworks also back this this operation of the community?
All right, okay. In terms of the planning horizon, the planning that we are doing now is based on the 20-year rolling plan, whereby every year we will start with the demand forecast, and later after we have the demand forecast approved, then only we go to the generation development plan, which will be then presented to JPET. So the committee, which is chaired by the Minister of NRECC, is actually will report the outcome of the meeting to the cabinet, to the cabinet, which is the highest authority body in the country. So this is where the validity or also the authority of the committee, which is under the Minister of NRECC. So in terms of the planning working group, which is chaired by ST, the committee comprised of all relevant stakeholders which are mainly involved in the electricity supply industry. We also have a representative from the Ministry of Economy, from the Ministry of Trade, which in which their input in terms of the development is very important for us to plan for the development for the development of the system going forward. So again, whatever the outcome of the meeting checked by the Minister of the NRECC will be escalated to the cabinet meeting, which will then endorse, and then from there on we will execute the plan as per the approval of the cabinet meeting.
Sorry, I was on mute. No, thank you very much, Mr. Rizal. Also, maybe another follow-up question in terms of developing energy scenarios. You highlighted a very relevant point that we have heard in let's say, in other conversation within the LTES network, and it is the importance of actually including in the energy scenarios the perspective from the expansion of the grid in terms of the transmission and distribution grid. And you mentioned that Malaysia is actually moving forward to make this integrated system planning, so the energy scenarios actually can also include this aspect for decentralization and decarbonization of the energy system. So my question here is if you can explain us a little bit more what actions is the country actually taking in terms of institutionality and legal frameworks or coordination, or what mechanisms is the country implementing to actually bring together these two perspectives? Because we have seen some examples in other countries, for instance, where these two processes are completely separated from each other and they work in isolation. So I think it's a good point that you mentioned. So if you can elaborate more on what are the actions that the country is taking towards including this holistic perspective in your energy scenarios.
I would like to continue from your explanation about the separation of generation and transmission, which increasingly become of important concern to us. Because, for example, previously, when we are executing the thermal project, we have between 4 to 6 years for the project to complete, and we have the still, while it's not ideal, but we can have time to plan for the transmission network reinforcement, adding up lines, adding up substation, and etc. So going forward, as we move towards having more renewable energy, especially solar, the lead time required to complete the solar project is much shorter. So when we have this plan going forward, we can see that there will be a mismatch between the pace of the transmission plan and also the generation plan. So much so that if we are continuing with this mode, our transmission or grid development plan might not be able to catch up with the generation development plan. And this is something that we would like to avoid, because not only it's not economic, because we may have to resort to curtailment, but the impact of having always to catch up will then put great constraint to our planning. As maybe you are already aware, we are a centralized planning. Our approach to planning is centralized, whereby most of the big decision will be made centrally through the under the guidance of the minister and also the cabinet. So moving forward, as we have more solar planned into in the future, we think that having the integrated system planning, which combine both generation and transmission development, as the approach for us to avoid having to build things uneconomically.
Mhm.
And I also forgot to mention that recently the government has launched the National Energy Transition Roadmap, which the primary objective is to expedite the development of renewable energy for the electricity supply industry. This is particularly important to us because now our approach will be now geared more towards having more RE in the future. And to do so, we need, as I mentioned earlier, we need to really consider having an adequate network to complement the rapid shift of our approach from a more conventional or thermal based to a renewable energy based mix. Yeah, I think that's
Okay, yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Rizal. So maybe to wrap up this question, what I'm hearing now is like basically this idea to have this integration in their scenarios of generation and transmission actually comes from, let's say, from a line from the committee that you have in place. Okay.
yes. The committee we look into both aspects. Previously, it is sequential. It will be generation first and then transmission.
Yes.
But now, through the committee, we will look these two elements concurrently, and that's where we will hopefully we will get the optimum result, and then we can execute the plan.
Okay. Excellent. Now, I would like to touch upon this stakeholder engagement. You mentioned in your slide about the use of scenario that among the different purposes that you give to energy scenarios, there is communication of result with a series of several publications of the result of the scenarios, but also you mentioned stakeholder engagement. We have found that this is a relevant aspects in the overall process for developing energy scenarios in terms of validation of results or inclusion of different perspectives from different sectors of the society or the economy. So my question here for you is if you can explain to us what, in terms of developing energy scenario, how this process is conducted. How do you, for instance, who's coordinating this engagement with the stakeholder process? With stakeholders are included, and also, I mean, what is the, I don't know, the governmental mechanism that actually support these stakeholder processes and engagement? And also, if maybe one question also related with this is, if during this stakeholder engagement or consultation processes, is there any, let's say, if you have found that after this consultation, you actually have to change something very critical in your energy scenarios or cases like that?
Yes, of course. When we discuss about the scenario building, we will take input from all important stakeholders. We will also look into the future trends. You know, while now EV may not be big in Malaysia, but going forward, we also projecting the increase of electric vehicle, which will then change not only the makeup of the demand mix, but also about the way the system need to respond to the demand. So this is where we need to, we will seek input and also guidance from all the parties which we think can assist us in this. Say, for example, for for the EV scenario, we will get input from the relevant association, from the studies, and also from the ministries that is in charge of the EV development in Malaysia. So I'm just taking just one example. So from there we will build our scenario based on what if. There will be so many what if. What if the EV will take up like 50% of our mix? What will be the mix then that required for us to plan forward? And also, what will be the global energy scenario? These are all things that we discuss together, and through the committee, we will then decide on the kind of scenario that we have to create, and also we have to develop and propose solution.
Okay, so the committee is basically leading this stakeholder engagement, and yes, well, thank you very much. Now I'd like to come back with Mr. Yusuf, kind of with the same questions. If you can elaborate a little bit more about the stakeholder consultation and processes that you are implementing in Indonesia. If you can explain us who's leading the process, who is engaged, what institutions are involved in these consultation processes, and let's say what are the main outcomes that you get from these consultation processes as well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so in this case, because we are the developer of the model, so we are also as well conducting the public consultation as well. So there are many insights we get from the audience, the participants. Yeah, for example, I call it visibility of solution. So for example, in terms of technological wise, the model said that we need to utilize more bioenergy for fueling power generation. But then what is it? The expert said that for particular regions the solution is not optimal in terms of the difficulties of collecting or getting the feedstock, for example, as well as the financial perspective or point of view. So, and from public consultation we got some we tested some technology, for example nuclear or the green hydrogens. So then we get the feedback on the particular technologies for this case. So yeah, I think this is what I've experienced.
Maybe one follow-up question on that, Mr. Yusuf. So where, let's say, based on what directive or is there a mandate, is there a law, or is there like a, I don't know, like a agreement on some kind of agreement, why you're implementing, or where the implementation of this stakeholder consultation comes from?
Yeah, in terms of national development planning approaches, like I said before, that we need to do such kind of public consultation. So I think yeah, quote unquote, this is required by by the regulation, that that when we are formulating the planning document, then we need to conduct such kind of public consultation or seminar or whatever, or FGD. So there is the such kind of regulation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Yusuf. Now, maybe to close this segment of conversation, maybe I would like to address one more question to you and to Mr. Rizal as well. If you can, well, in terms of creating the skills that the country requires for developing and using energy scenarios, you mentioned the important participation, let's say, in the training programs, or you are planning alliance with universities, and you also highlighted the role of the GIZ, for instance, in creating these skills. So I wanted to ask you if you can explain us how the country actually gave the first steps in creating these skills in the country in Indonesia, and also what is the country doing in order to make them sustainable in the long term, let's say, to keep these skills in the country, or what approaches are you taking in order to, let's say, keep like updating the capacities on energy scenarios?
Yeah, okay. So first of all, we would like to have such kind of training how to use the tools, how to create a model, how to set up scenarios, and then what I said, the ability to do that. In order to do that, so what I said, we have some kind of quote unquote cooperation to conduct some activities to do such kind of training. So we are planning. So this is in the planning stage. So we are planning to have such kind of a training, and then I propose to have such kind of alliance with universities, because who will use the model or the tool frequently is universities. So that's why we encourage, we propose to have such kind of things. But another thing that I'm proposing is that we are I call it opening the data, because data is available, but in some cases not accessible. So I think this is also important, how particularly Indonesia can have more data open for universities, for experts to do such kind of research and etc. So then the capacity of human resources will improve, will increase. So yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Yusuf. Now to you, Mr. Rizal, if you can also, kind of the same question, if you can all explain us how Malaysia is actually creating the necessary skills to develop and use energy scenarios to inform development plans or energy policies or other public instruments, and to guarantee the sustainability of these skills to remain in the country.
Yeah, this is very good question, Jose. I think the prerequisite for the for this energy planning is the modeling. Yeah, we must have enough or a large enough pool of people that is capable to do the modeling, and not only to do the modeling, but also to the people that can understand what's behind the number produced by the model. So this is where the part where we continuously conduct training, refresher course to those who are already involved. Having said that, I think we must have the capacity building development plan, which take into consideration the career development of the modeler, because we cannot expect people to stay at the same place for a long time. There must be some career progression. So this is the part that we try as much as possible reflect the expertise that accumulated over the year uh, with the career of the personnel. Yeah. And I think having a good grasp of a tool is important, but having a people that can understand, can build up the scenario is if not more important, is equally important with the modeler. So we are looking at both ends, and we have a very good pool of people that is doing the function here in energy commission and also in single buyer.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, sorry, I got mute. So, no, thank you very much to Mr. Yusuf and Mr. Mohd for this insightful conversation. Now, maybe we're running out of time, so maybe I will address maybe one or two questions from the audience. And maybe I would like to start with, well, maybe these questions could be addressed to two of you. So the audience asks, basically, what are the main challenges you faced during the scenario development process? Is there any lesson learned that you want to share with us? So maybe I will start with you, Mr. Rizal.
There's always problem when we finalizing the scenario because things keep on changing. If you talk about a trend, we are dealing with the uncertainty at the moment. So it's quite difficult to establish a certain trend going forward. So this is where the part that we are having a, a, um, a mix or a range of scenario that consider both the low end and the high end of the growth. There will be scenario that reflect I'm taking example EV again, the low penetration of EV in the market and also the high penetration of EV in the market. So we have scenario that cater for both end of low growth and medium and also the high growth. So that's how we deal with the scenario building, and also we are that's how we build the scenario.
Okay, thank you. Now to you, Mr. Yusuf, like the same question.
Yeah,
The challenges.
I think I agree with Mr. Ramli, Mr. Rizal. So how can we quote unquote project or predict the advancement of technology? It is quite difficult, particularly for some technologies that previously not exist. But Mr. Ramli Rizal said about EV, for example, we don't have much data, historical data, so then it is difficult to predict or to project the future. So then we did kind of expert or focus group discussion, expert consultation, such kind of things to get better vision of the future.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Yusuf. Maybe one last question, also maybe address it to both of you. So we have this question from the audience that says, how the climate ambition is integrated in the planning processes? Maybe we can start with you, Mr. Yusuf.
Yeah, so actually we Indonesia already give pledge or give commitment to to reduce the CO2 emissions. So then, what is it? The target of reduction is one of the goal or the objective of the model or the scenario. So then, yeah, I think we've incorporated the climate issue in this case. Yeah.
Okay, now to you, Mr. Rizal.
Yeah, I think I agree with Pak Yusuf on this. We have the climate commitment, climate change, the commitment as one of the basis for the scenario building. In all the plan that we made so far, must always incorporate the commitment made internationally on climate change. So and going forward, as I think globally we are talking about net zero. This is also something that we are working on, and with the minimum target of net zero by 2050. So this is the kind of global trends that influence our plan, and also perhaps dictate how do we plan for the ESI in the future.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much to both of you, Mr. Yusuf, Mr. Rizal, for your presentations and sharing your insights also about how actually you are addressing the different aspects of developing and using energy scenarios towards achieving a cleaner energy system, cleaner energy system. So thank you again. And now I will ask if Nadine can help me with the presentation. Now we are in the last part of the session, so we're closing now. I just wanted to, before we go, I just wanted to know, I wanted to give some announcements. So yes, so for the next week, we have two more presentations. We have a presentation from Nepal, from from the Ministry of Energy, Water Resources and Irrigation and Alternative Energy Promotion Center, and also a presentation from Pakistan, from the National Transmission and Dispatch Company. And for the upcoming session, we will have the case of Bhutan sharing their experiences on energy scenarios. I also would like to mention that we have several questions in the chat that we couldn't address during the session, but we will share these questions to the panelists and we will circulate into the people who actually ask them. So, and also just to finalize, we will going to project right now a short video about the LTES network before we close. And well, thank you very much again. So Nadine, if you can help me with the video. Well, apparently we're having some troubles, technical issues here, but in any case, thank you very much to all the participants to this second session of the webinar series. And we really hope to see you next week for the upcoming session. So thank you very much again and have a nice day.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Pak Rizal. Thank you, Pak Jose.
Yeah, thank you, Pak Yusuf.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, goodbye.